Hey there, this is Red. It's time for Red Reveals. So today we're going to be talking about Dune Imperium, and actually I already started an unboxing video of this, but I decided to go back and make another one now that I've played the game more times, just so I can talk about the components that are in here a little bit better. So what I've done is I've unboxed, played a few, and I put them back in the box, and I'll open it up and we'll go through all of what's inside the box. All right, so Dune Imperium, it's a 1 to 4 player game, and it takes about maybe, I imagine once you know everything, it could go as fast as 30 minutes, but I'm gonna say an hour to an hour and a half. At least in the solo plays that I've done, that's how long it takes. So let's take a look inside here, and I'm gonna open the box up. And the first thing you're gonna have is your rule book. Now the rule book for Dune Imperium, let me slide this out of the way a little bit, is pretty amazing. All right, so what I like about it is there's not a lot of pages in the rule book. So if we flip to the back here, we've got page, what is it, 15, 16 pages? Not a big rule book. And there's a lot of pictures. So if we go looking through this, what you'll see is you've got a nice layout of some of the symbols are. We talk about all the game components that are in there. Then we go through board setup. And you kind of got an overview of what it is that you're doing. Essentially, you're playing the leaders of the major houses and you're trying to control the empire there. So then we've got kind of how your round plays out, which is comprised of, and it kind of goes through the round structure there. You've got a start, player turns. On your player turn, you have an agent turn, or you have a continued agent turn, or you have a reveal turn. It's kind of a do stuff and then get stuff. And then you've got, and doing stuff, you kind of get stuff too, but that's, well, once we get into play, we'll go over that. And you got combat, makers, recall, and then some rule clarifications down here at the bottom, which I've needed to look at a couple of times. And then some strategy tips at the end, so, and then credit. So it's not very complex. I would say the most complex about this is learning all of the iconography that comes in the game. So there's your rule book. It's pretty short and sweet. Let's take a look at what else is in the box. Bring the box back over here. All right, so another page that we've got in here is our rules for solo and 2-player. So the 2-player changes a little bit where you have an automated opponent, which it talks about down here. And then in solo play, you actually play with 2 automated opponents, and they do a little bit more. So in the 2-player, the automated opponent really isn't trying to win. It's just kind of getting in the way and doing things to make things interesting, so it's not just the 2 people against themselves. In the solo play, you're competing a lot more against the 2 opponents, trying to beat them, and they're doing things and gathering points. So I've done a lot of the solo play. When I do a playthrough, we'll do solo play. All right, and then they have this guide in here, which is the board space guide, which just talks about some of the different special things about what happens on different spaces on the board. So, just hit my microphone. So speaking about the board space guide, let's take a look at the board, which is the next thing in the box. So move this out of the way, and you can see I've already sleeved and kind of got some things ready here. So when we get to that, that'll be in a minute here. All right. So I've obviously already punched all the stuff and taken the things all out of baggies, but let's take a look at the board here. So move some stuff out of the way, and this is your game board. On your game board, you've got some different factions that run along the left here. You have the Lonstrad Council here, some Chome actions, and then your basic kind of areas that you can go to, as well as this is where conflict happens at. They'll talk about the conflict. That's where this happens. You garrison your troops here, then you come into the middle for the conflict. And then you've got a track down the side, which is where you keep track of points. There's a space here for you to put your conflict cards at. So we'll take a look at those in just a second, but it's a nice board. It's really good quality. The printing on it is pretty awesome too. I like it. It looks good. The layout's spacious. Nice component. All right, so let's put this away and we'll take a look at some of the other components that are in here. Pull this box back on down. All right, so you're gonna have, I'll pull out the 4 colors here. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're gonna have a bunch of components in 4 colors. And we'll get that back out of the way, which are these right here. All right, components in 4 colors. Now, if I dump one of these out, we'll take a look at the bits that are in there. You're gonna have a couple of round tokens, which look like that. I mean, essentially, you got a square, round piece of wood. You have your agent tokens, which are these little dudes or dudettes. I don't know, it's kind of in a big robe. It's tough to tell if it's a dude or dudette. Duder, I don't know. What's the gender neutral dude? Not sure. So you get 3 of those. Normally you start with 2 and then acquire the other one as you go along. You have these little flags that on some of the spaces on the board you can actually capture and control them. So that's what you need the flags for. These are your troops that you use for combat. And then you have a little combat calculator token, which is this little guy right here. It goes up to 20 on the board, and then you can flip it and do 20 plus when you're calculating each round how much combat you've got. So there's 4 colors of those, because up to 4 players, right? You got a green, a red, a gold, and a blue. All right. So that's the first thing you're going to be getting out of baggies and punching out. Let's move those out of the way. We'll bring our box back down here. Next thing you're going to be punching out is going to be, there's some Baron Harkonnen tokens. So you see these big square Harkonnen guys. Now what he's got is on his, it's got him on the front and then on the back. It's got some symbols for the different factions, like the Bene Gesserit, I believe, is that one. And you've got, this one's the Fremen. So when you play Baron Harkonnen as one of the characters, you get to choose 2 of these. And there's a point where after you gain, I think it's 4 troops, you reveal them, and then you get bonus faction in those things. So that's what these tokens are for. Other tokens you'll have is the first player token, which is right there. It's a big worm, so take a look at that. There you go. That's pretty cool. Then you have faction tokens. So there's one faction, there's the next faction, 3rd one, and the 4th one. All right, those are your 4 factions in the game. And then you got one more token for the Mentat. So you can get him on your side. He's somebody you can spend some stuff to acquire, and you get him for a round, and he enables you to do another action. So another little wood guy there. All right, what else we got in the box here? Also in the box, we've got, pull this down here, we've got, before we go through cards, you've got these, which are just big gray discs. Those are Solari, which is essentially, I believe that's like money in the game, essentially is what it equates out to. You've got spice. So you've got some orange spice tokens here. Now, if you take a look at these, there are large ones and then there are small ones. All right, so in the game, 1s and 5s, 1s and 5s. And you can't run out, so even if you don't have tokens, you find something else to represent what it is. So it's not a limited resource pool. All right, so we've got your Solari and we've got our spice. Get those out of the way. What else we got in the box? We've got, all right, we're doing Dune, so there's water. There's tokens for water. Those will be part of the game. All right, next up, let's take a look at cards. So there's a couple of people, or not a couple, there are actually 8, which is more than a couple, people you can play in the game. So you've got Duke Leto Atreides. You've got Paul Atreides. You have Baron Vladimir Harkonnen and Raban the Beast. So these are ones that you probably recognize from the earlier movies and the first books. Now, there's some other ones that are in here, which I had to do some looking up because I don't recognize these. So you've got Count Ilban Rachis and Helena Rachis. So actually, I believe this is Leto Atreides' mother, if you go back into the things, and this is her father. So they ran another planet that competed with Ix for technology. So, and then you've got the Thorvalds, which are Memnon Thorvald and Arania Thorvald. Now, I believe these two started the rebellion after Paul ended up taking over and becoming the emperor, I think is how that comes into play. So I think that's how they play out in the universe. But these four were new to me. I knew all of these four, so there you got a little bit. If you go on, like Dune Week, the Dune Wiki, you can kind of figure this stuff out. So I think these are all from the newer books that are out there, and these are from the original stuff. So there are some mentions of things around these people in the original books, but these are what the main stories from the original stuff's around. All right, so the extended universe, I believe, has these folks in it. All right, if you know more about that, let me know in the comments. All right, so next up, what else is in the box? All right, now we've got cards. We're down to cards. So let's talk about which cards we want to talk about first. So you're gonna have a couple of sets of cards. There's gonna be House Hagal cards. There are going to be Intrigue cards, which are these. There are going to be conflict cards, and hey, guess what? Yours aren't going to come with sleeves. I did that. And then you have a bunch of these space-looking cards that have a different purpose that I will show you here in a second. And some of the cards, well, they all have a different back, and the box is just empty at that point. All right, nice box for space, lots of space for storage. There's also a bunch of plastic baggies in the box. Very convenient. All right, so we'll talk about these space cards here in a second because these make up your hand and there's some different types. Let's talk about these other cards here first. So the first ones to talk about are the House Hagal cards. So what these are going to do is if you're playing 1 or 2 player, you're going to flip these over and see what the actions of the automated opponent do. So there's a House Hagal card. Take a look at the back side. We can see that on this turn, so some of them have a 1P or a 2P in there. If you're playing 1 player, you use the 1P cards and take out the 2P cards. If you're playing 2 player, guess what? You keep the 2P cards and take the 1P cards out. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so this would say that as for that opponent, your automated opponent, they're going to go to this space on the board. And then if this is already taken, then you would discard it and grab another one. That's for their action. They also draw a card when the combat happens, and in combat they would get 1 additional modifier to their combat. A troop counts as 2. This would add an additional 1. So if they had 4 troops out there, they would be 8, and they'd get additional 1, so they would go up to 9. Okay. So those are the House Hagal cards. Now I think one of the things I'll mention really fast, if we go back to one of these cards. On the back side, there's a turn reference. So if you play with some, you can use the other ones to take a look at how the turn goes. So just to go through that really fast, I'm not going to read everything off, but essentially you've got your start, your player turn, then combat, then your makers. So you make some spice, and then kind of a reset or recall there at the end. So that's how the turn goes. But it's nice to have the reference on the back of the cards, because if you've got 8 of these, that means that even if you're playing 4 players, there's enough cards for everybody to have their own to know what the round looks like. All right, so we've hit House Hagal. During the game, you can get these Intrigue cards. So what Intrigue cards are, they enhance the way the game is played or the things that you can do. As you get them, you can affect the state of the game with these. So some of them are plot cards, which are like this one right here. So this would allow you during your turn to bring one of your agents back. Some of them are combat cards, like this one right here. So during combat, you would play this and you would either get a bonus or you could retreat your troops. And then the last one, the last type that you could possibly get are end game cards. So these would come out, guess what, at the end game, and you would see whether you get, in this case, more victory points. So there's a nice stack of those that do a variety of different things. And you will not go through all of those in a game. At least in a solo game, you won't go through all of those. I haven't played multiplayer yet, so maybe there's that possibility. All right, next up is your conflict cards. So what's going to happen is each turn, you're going to flip over a conflict card. And if you take a look, there's some that have a 1 on the back, and there's some that have a 2 on the back. And then there's some that have a 3 on the back. All right, so at the beginning of the game, you're going to build a conflict deck, and it's going to be, I believe it's 1 of the conflict 1s, I think it's 5 of the conflict 2s, and then all of the conflict 3s. So when you take a look at the conflict 1 cards, what you'll see here is this is when you battle down in that little battle area where you figure out your troops and your combat score. Whoever wins that battle is going to get the first prize that's here, which in this case is a victory point. Whoever comes in second gets an Intrigue card plus 2 Solari. And then third would get 2 Solari. Now third only comes into play if you're playing 4 players. If you're playing 3 players, there's only a first and a second. If you're playing 1 player, you're going to have 2 automata. If you're playing 2 players, you're going to have 1 automata. So really, there's always kind of 3 players in the mix. But that's how the prizes get handed out for each of those. So you're going to turn one of these over at the beginning of each turn to determine what the winner of the combat gets. Now, when you build this deck, like I said, you pick out one of these. So you're going to randomly grab one, then you're going to randomly grab 5 of these, then you grab all of these. As the game goes on, you will see that these get better, right? So here, you're getting a lot more Solari than you saw in the last one, right? So there was a victory point, but you're getting a lot more here. In this one, we get to 3. Here we're seeing first place gets 2 victory points, plus they get to place there. We saw those flags. They can claim ownership of the Battle of Carthage, because this is the battle for Carthage, so they would get ownership of Carthage. So there we go. Those are the conflict cards. Now, the game's going to play until somebody reaches 10 points or you run out of your conflict stack. When either of those happens, you're at endgame. All right, last thing that's in the box is these cards right here, which are the cards that you're going to use for your hand. So normally you start with a deck of 10 cards. So let's see here. As you look through these cards, so all these have the same backs, right? Because they're going to end up getting shuffled into your hands potentially. There's going to be cards that have these little symbols up in the corner right there. These are the cards that are your starter cards. So there's going to be 4 sets of 10 cards, which are going to be a Signet Ring. You have a Seek Allies, Reconnaissance, Dune, the Desert Planet, Diplomacy, Dagger, Convincing Argument. I think that's the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There you go. There's your 10 cards that you would start off with in your hand. And they do different things. These are different places. All these are places you can go to on the sides. And then when you play them, you get whatever this piece is right here. You have an agent phase and you play them and can go to here with your agent. And then you get this as a result when you play your agent. Now this down here is when you don't play an agent and you reveal the card, which is another aspect of the game. These are resources to buy other cards. And that's where this other massive stack of cards comes into play, because you're deck building at that point in time. So there's actually a couple of sub decks in here. So let me grab out some of the other cards that are in here. So we have, first off, is Fold Space. Now, Fold Space is not a card you can buy. You can only get there by going to, I think it's the Spacing Guild. Yeah. There's a space on the board you can go to get Fold Space, which later allows you to go essentially anywhere of the spaces on the board. Plus, you would get to draw a card, and then you have to trash this card. All right, so that's one card you can't buy, but those will always be on the table as the Fold Space cards. Another card that you can buy, but it's not randomly selected out of the stack, is the Spice Must Flow. So if you manage to get 9, which is a lot of resources, you would automatically get a victory point. And then every time, you don't really have anywhere to go with this card, as you see on the side, so it's going to kind of sit in your hand after that. But at your end part, when you reveal everything you have, you would end up getting 1 spice. So you pay 9, you can get a victory point, and then also you'd end up getting a spice every round. And victory points are kind of tough to come by, so if you can get to that 9, that's pretty good. All right, and then there's a cheap card that's going to sit out there, which is this Arrakis Liaison. So there's going to be a stack of those sitting out there, and for a cost of 2, he's fairly easy to get a hold of, lets you go to a couple of spaces, and has a value of 2 himself. So those are 3 cards that will always sit out. So these will go out in piles. Now the rest of these cards that I have here, this massive stack, is going to get shuffled up, and you're going to have 5 showing at any point in time. So 5 will be set out, and then when you go from not your agent phase, but during your reveal phase, these would be cards that you can buy. So there's a huge stack of these, and like here, here's an example one, Duncan Idaho. So Duncan Idaho is going to cost you 4 to get a hold of. And then like the other cards, he's going to potentially if you play him during your agent phase, you can potentially go to here. And then you would also get this reward. But if you end up not playing him and holding on to him until your reveal phase, then you would get this reward down here. So when you would hit the reveal phase, you would get a water, and you would add 2 combat to whatever you have in your combat zone, right? And there's a ton of these cards. So I don't know, I'm going to flip through some of these really fast. So let's see here. Where's some cool ones? So you've got a Stilgar in there. Let's look for some names that you might recognize. Lady Jessica is in there. You've got the Quetzalcoatl. You've got the Voice. You've got some Sardaukar infantry. Worm Riders. Gianni. Thufir. What else we got in there? Oh, there's Gurney. Gurney Halleck. You've got some space travel. Oh. Test of Humanity. Put your hand into the box. You got a Chris knife. I mean, all great stuff from the shows and the books out there, right? Oh. Fighter is pretty awesome too. So there's a ton of cards that have a bunch of different abilities in here, and you're going to buy these turn to turn. So really, that's everything that's in the box. You've got cards. You got your cards for play. You got your cards that. Oh, sorry. You got your cards for play. These are your 10 that you start out with. You can start out with 10 cards. Part of that is you can buy cards that would be revealed from here. There's always 5 on the board at any point in time. There's also these cards to potentially buy or earn if you visit the Spacing Guild. You've got conflict cards, which you use to determine what the conflict for that round is. You get intrigue cards, which give you kind of special one-off abilities. You have House of Hagal cards, which are used to automate opponents for 2-player and 1-player games. You have Solari, Spice, Water, your different faction components. You have some special tokens that you use for other stuff. These are your first player and some Baron Harkonnen ones, as well as your faction tokens. And then the Mentat is in there also. And then your player board, which again is just awesome. So we'll fold it open one more time just so you can get a look at that. I think we're going to call it good after that point. So there we go. There's the big board. It's beautiful. Beautiful game. A lot of fun to play. I've been seeing a lot of people put this on their top 10 for the year, and I'd have to agree. I'm having a blast with this game. This is really good. So that's an unboxing. Next up, we'll probably do a solo playthrough of Dune Imperium, so you can see what a solo game looks like. Watch It Played has a great playthrough of this also, so I would check that out. I'll put a link in the description there so you can see that. But I think that's going to be it for now. So this is Dune Imperium by Direwolf Digital. Oh, the other thing that I will throw out there is there's another option besides the House of Hagal cards that are out there. Direwolf Digital, you can actually, they have an app that will automate the playing of the House of Hagal cards. So if you have a phone, it says on PC, but I haven't been able to find the PC link. Maybe if you know what that is, put that in the comments, because I haven't been able to get to a PC version of it, just a app version of it from the Play Store or from the Apple Store, are the only 2 places that I've seen it. I haven't. If you know where the PC version is, let me know, because I'd like to have the PC version. But it will automate playing of these, so you don't actually have to use the cards. But the cards are fairly easy to use, too. It's pretty intuitive. I don't think you need the app. It's nice, but totally not necessary. Cards work great. All right, So that's it for now. That's unboxing of Dune Imperium and all the components are there. And pretty soon we'll do a playthrough. So that's it for now. And thanks for watching.